It is challenging to earn money and save money in Gran Turismo 7, but there are ways you can optimize your garage and optimize the cars in your garage to save your credits, and it all starts with tuning them. Let's get started. Hi guys, Imposter here, welcome back to the channel. Today, wanted to flip the script on Gran Turismo 7 a little bit just because I think it's easy for a lot of us to focus on how the game was released. Wasn't released very smoothly. Lots of focus on how microtransactions were such a big focus of the game. Wasn't much money to be earned. Lots of server issues, all that kind of stuff. But Kazu and Polyphony say they're working on it. And that's all we can really ask for at this point. But until then, we kind of have to make do with what we have. And in doing so, we have to make do with the cars that we earn or the cars that we buy. And so I've been kind of playing around with the cars in my garage and tuning them and working on them to be able to not have to purchase as many cars, because you can actually tune many different cars to many different performance point levels, which I think a lot of people don't realize, and it's an important thing to do in order to maximize your credits. In previous Gran Turismo games in the past, in GT5 and GT6 when I played, there are plenty of times where I'd buy a new car for a new race or a new championship, and it was totally possible. I had the credits, but not so much now. So that's the idea behind this video, is to show you kind of how you can utilize everything you have while not overbuying, not adding a bunch of cars to your garage and diluting it to where you're going to use a car one and done. As well, I think tuning is really important just because some of the tunes in this game are just not good. The stock tunes are really bad for some of the cars, and it doesn't represent the cars very well. So, lots of different things to cover here, but we'll jump into it and I'll show you kind of what I mean. There are a few different cars here, actually, that I think are really relevant to this. And they're cars that I've ended up actually tuning, and they're much better now. One of which being this one, the GT350R. This thing in stock form, I'm honestly disappointed in what they did with it. And I know that they tried to keep it as real as possible. You know, in real life it has limited slip diff, grippy tires, lots of power, etc. Traditional rear-wheel drive muscle car formula. But it just doesn't feel that way. You know, I feel like this car, I've never driven one obviously, but I feel like this car should handle much better compared to what it does in real life. So that's kind of what I want to touch on here, because there's just all these little elements where I think it would lead someone to use the car once in a race, and then if it doesn't go well, they won't revisit it. And that's a missed opportunity, because this car actually in particular is really good for the 550, 600, 650 performance point levels. And I'm going to make a video on how to tune it for those. But for now, I just kind of want to show you what I'm on about with this whole thing about the stock tunes, because it's just, it's not ideal. So let's take a look. We're going to go to Trial Mountain here. I think Trial Mountain's kind of a good overall test for these cars, given all the turns and straights, braking zones. It's just a nice way to get an all-around test on these cars. So this is bone stock, this GT. I've not modified anything on it. This is how you'd get it if you just buy it right away. Straight away, you have to use traction control, which is something I don't really dig. You can obviously see down there at the bottom, traction control meter is working like crazy to keep you in check. Especially at low speed, it interferes like crazy. And I'm on 3, so it's not even maxed out, but you almost have to drive it with traction control on in stock form, which I don't think should be necessary. You know, especially I don't really use any sort of assists when I play. So to force me to use traction control makes me less inclined to use the car in the first place. As you can see, this thing has a ton of oversteer programmed into it, and it's just, you can see how much flailing at the wheel I'm doing. That's why I want to show you the wheel and pedal cam, because this thing requires way more input and braking's not balanced. Obviously, you can tell by the way the back was just moving around there. The rear springs, actually, and the front springs are too stiff for what the car is. It needs a little more flex. And it probably would help to reduce that. And, you know, obviously I'm not focusing on going super hard on the slap right now, but just to kind of give you an overall idea, you have to be super ginger with the throttle. You can't have too big of sudden movements on this thing, so it just doesn't make driving it very fun. But with very light tuning, it can become very fun. Another thing I don't think that they did very well is represent tire choices for stock cars. I think this car comes with Pilot Sport Cup 2s or Pilot Super Sports, one of the two, which I think is more than a sports hard tire. I think that's sports medium, maybe not quite sports soft, but either way, should come with more grip for being a stock car. And so, yeah, you can see quite a bit of flailing going around here to keep it in check. But now let me show you, just real quick. Oops, didn't mean to retry here. We're going to switch the tune, and we'll go to, let's see here. We'll do just the 600 one that I made. And I'm going to make a separate video for this, so you can see kind of how this all works. But even just going to 600, this thing is like a dream compared to stock. Braking is way more direct. Turning is way more like pointable. You can actually kind of determine where the car is going to end up out of a turn. And the differential isn't tightened like crazy to where it almost fully locks when you accelerate, causing you to whip the tail out with very, very little throttle. So this tune actually allows you to get on the throttle much earlier, thus being more efficient in the turns. And as well, as you can see there, a little bit of oversteer, very controllable. And that was the idea. I haven't tuned that fully out of this thing yet. You know, you don't want to add like too much ballast to the back of it to counteract that. But I mean, in general, there's just so much less correcting I have to do for the car. And you don't want to end up fighting the car when you're trying to fight for position or whatever it is. It's just completely counterintuitive. So again, I know I'm not taking racing lines through here, but I just want to show you we're moving at a similar pace to the stock car with very little input comparatively. And obviously, you know, I'm not trying to minimize input overall, but just like the really quick jerky stuff, that just kills your lap times. So that's the stuff you want to focus on to work out of a tune. We'll look at another example here. I'll grab another car. This one here is the other culprit of a poor stock tune. Now, this is a car in GT3 RS form. The 911 should be kind of a plug-and-play track car, and it does not behave as such when you first get in it. And it's just little things you can do to change that, but it's just as a little weird to me that they didn't do that from the get-go. You know, I think that's kind of a missed opportunity to make it a little easier to play this game, but maybe they're trying to force you to tune? Not exactly sure. But I remember in Gran Turismo 5 when I played, I played that game for, gosh, at least 1,000 hours. Like, crazy amount of time I spent in that game. And I don't know if I even tuned any. To be honest, I can't remember. In GT6, I remember I did a little bit, but it wasn't needed. We didn't need to do that. So, let's take this one for a drive. We'll turn everything off here. Now, granted, this one does handle better than the Shelby out of the box, which is not surprising. Balance of the car is totally different since the engine is in the exact opposite spot. But overall, it just feels a little swirly. Not as stable as it should be for what it is. And I know you're saying, like, yes, mods will take care of that, but you know, I just feel like things like that shouldn't be so jerky, and it just feels off. This is a tougher one because I can't exactly pinpoint it. I could pinpoint it on the Shelby, you know, with springs being too stiff. I can tell this one's a little stiff for what it is, and the differential definitely needs to be loosened up. Because you can, barely get on the power of this thing mid-turn. And if you do, be prepared to flick your wheel. So, you know, certain cars are better than others. This one was certainly better than most, I would say, but it's still just not quite there. So go into buying new cars in this game expecting that, and know that you can make very small adjustments to suspension and differentials and springs and stuff like that and get pretty big results depending on what kind of tune you're after, you know, performance point level and everything like that. So I'll be making those sorts of guides coming up to show you kind of how to do it with various cars. But I think it's just important to know that going into buying a brand new car, it's not going to be perfect when you get in it. There's very few cars in this game, I think, other than, you know, race cars. Group 3, 2, 1, those kind of things are better. They still need a little bit, but road cars typically need the most in order to get them to be most effective for you on the track. So that's overall what I wanted to show you here. As well, remember that you can tune these to a bunch of different performance points. This GT3 actually, I don't have a tune saved for this one. You can actually tune this thing all the way down to, I think it's like 560 or 575-ish. Maybe even lower. It might have been a 550, I can't remember. But it's 633 stock. And it's still really quick for a 550 car or 575, whatever it is, because it is a GT3, but you have to tune it to get it there. So that's the message, I guess. Don't be afraid to tune. Even on cars like this, it could be a Honda Civic. One of the Honda Civic hatchbacks that I used in a few different events was brilliant after I tuned it. Before that, it was a little bit meh. But after, worked wonders. It was great. So anyway, I think you get the message. Hopefully this provides some value. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you have things to add, certainly add them. If you have suggestions for cars you want to see tuned, certainly comment that. I'm going to work on the GT350R. I'm working on one for the Lancer. I'm going to do one for the GT3 RS as well. So start a conversation. Let me know what you think. And I want to hear your input as well. If you have any other tips, I'm certainly no professional driver. I've just tinkered with settings for a very long time in these games, and figured I would share that knowledge while we're in this weird time of struggling to get past, like, I don't know, I'm already 20 levels into collecting and I'm not past 1.5. I haven't gotten past 2, which I think in like Gran Turismo 6 you'd be at like 5.5 maybe by now. So anyway, if you enjoyed, consider liking, consider subscribing. There'll be more videos where this came from, and I thank you very much for tuning in. Till next time.